Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I've got a special situation today in that I'm going to be talking about some of my new picks that I've recently made. These companies would first appear on my In the News shows, and then I do more homework on the companies after I see some impressive news. And I've seen enough with these companies that I'm comfortable in making them official picks in my report. I'm also reaching out to the management of the company to try to get interviews with them. And I'm hopeful that some of them also become sponsors because I think that they're of my shows because I think that they're in the early days of making new discoveries that are quite important. And I think that what I offer with my sponsorship in my shows is that I do a series of interviews when these companies have important news out. I also cover them very closely in my sector reports. And when they do become a sponsor, I also do some written stuff on them to introduce them as an official sponsor. So I'm able to follow my sponsors the closest, but I am comfortable with adding these companies to my coverage list. And the first thing that I'm going to go to, I'm just going to pull up my screen share here. Just bear with me for a second. So I'm putting out all of my content these days on a website that is an excellent source for me to quite easily put my reports out. It's called Substack, and my address there is rocksandstocks.substack.com. Why I like the site so much is it makes it really easy for me to send out all of my reports, whether they be video or written, to my audience, and incorporate my email list that I've built up since I started research and reporting on the sector in 2050 or 2005. This is my Rocks and Stocks News website at Substack, rocksandstocks.substack.com. And I'm going to scroll down here to February the 7th. And on February the 7th, I put out a note to paid subscribers. That's another thing that's great about Substack is they make it really easy for people to become paid subscribers to my work. And what I do for paid subscribers is I give them insights and brief notes when I see things that I want to share, and I don't need to put out a big report on it. And in this particular one here that you're looking at right now, normally it's only available to those that are paid subscribers on my Substack. But I want to give you some insight, show you what I do with them. So in this particular one on February the 7th, I noted that I found a new group of companies that I planned on putting in my official picks, and I gave my paid subscribers a heads up on those. And so at that point, I called them candidates that I'm considering, and that I would do them in an upcoming report, that everybody gets those reports. But the special stuff, the added value for the paid subscribers is that in this case, they got a heads up on some picks that I was going to make. Faraday Copper was one of those picks. They had been reporting excellent copper results from a project in Arizona, and they recently secured a $30 million financing, actually over $30 million, to aggressively drill their copper project in Arizona. And I'm going to talk about that more in a moment. Then I also noted that Relevant Gold has what looks like an impressive new orogenic gold discovery in Wyoming. In their near surface drilling, they had tagged bonanza grade gold, which is an important development in orogenic gold systems. Then I talked about Golden Ridge Resources. And I made note that they have a tiny valuation, but have recently completed drilling near Newfound Gold's a big discovery in Newfoundland. And what I found particularly impressive is that the project has similar gold occurrences to what led to Newfound Gold's discovery. I'll show you more about that in a few moments. Then I also talked about Emergent Metals. Emergent Metals has an interesting project in Quebec where they haven't announced the assay results yet, but they did note and that they hit visible gold in their recent drilling. So I think there's a pretty good chance that they're going to come out with some excellent results out of that. Summa Silver hitting very high grade gold or high grade silver in New Mexico. And I feel that that's going to drive their valuation much higher. And then I talked about Masivo Silver, and they've been drilling, and it sounds like they hit something in their first hole on a historically producing project in Nevada. And I noted that I'd be interviewing them that morning, which I did, and you can find on the Substack main page. So let's get into Faraday Copper to start with. I'm going to just pull up their website. And oftentimes when I look at a company, you can learn a lot about a company from their headlines. And so let's take a look just in 2023. So in 2023, they announced on January 31st, or sorry, on January the 17th, or first of all, on January 10th, they announced that they intersected massive copper sulfide and provided an exploration update. Then on January 17th, they announced 15 meters at 10.83% copper, 1.65 grams of gold, and 55 grams of silver at the Copper Creek project in Arizona. They followed that up 2 weeks later by announcing that they hit 33.77 meters at 3.43% copper, within 65 meters at 1.88% copper at the Copper Creek project. So then they announced that a couple days later, they announced that they arranged a $30 million bought deal financing. And then they upped that on February 6th. They upsized that to 34.8 million. So it's no wonder when you hit those kind of intersections from the 15 meters at 10.83% copper, 33 meters of 3.43% copper, or that bigger intersection of 65.2 meters at 1.88% copper, you're going to get serious investors' attention, and they're throwing money at this company to allow them to aggressively go and drill at their project. Now let's just look at FDY here for a second. FDY has 123 million shares out. They've got $102 million valuation. Okay, so now let's go to their stock chart and FDY, and there's your Faraday Copper. So as you can see here, they bottomed in September, October. They had a significant breakout above their 50-day moving average. It continued to trend upwards, and they touched their 200-day moving average. Then they came back to the 50-day moving average and have blasted off again ever since. I would note that they went through the golden cross here in January. They also have a tremendous January effect. They started the month at around 50-ish cents, and now they're up to, well, by the end of the month, they had traded as high as, 80 cents. And today they're sitting at 83 cents. Or on Friday, they were sitting at 83 cents. They're trading aggressively above their 50-day moving average. and their 200-day moving average. The 200-day moving average is bottoming and about to get more bullish. And look at the trajectory of this rally on the 50-day moving average. That's a very bullish trend. And then you look again back at the drill results that they've had so far. Very impressive stuff. And I think that, well, I think that this company is going to have tremendous news flow. They've got the money now to go and aggressively drill that project. And with the grades that they're hitting at that project and the thicknesses, it sounds like it's got a lot of legs to me to be a much bigger discovery. And I'm really impressed with this story. And there you go. All right. So the next company I'm going to, oh, my Substack disappeared on me for a second there. I'll just go back to, here we go. I'll go to the main page and we'll get back down to that February the 7th notes to paid to subscribers. Okay. So the next company up is Relevant Gold. And as I said, they tag bonanza grade gold, great gold in an orogenic gold system in Wyoming. All right, so let's pick up Relevant Gold here. Relevant Gold. And let's look at their news releases. I always like starting out at the headlines tell you a lot about the story. Relevant Gold intersects 83.1 or 83.8 grams per ton of gold over 1 meter. You know, as I said, that's sort of a seminal moment in an orogenic gold system. When you start tagging that bonanza grade stuff, you know, in an orogenic gold system, they're structurally controlled. And those faults those structures are deep-seated faults. They're cracks in the earth that allow the metals bearing fluid to make their way up to surface. And you know, they're within 200 meters of surface, and they're already getting into some bonanza grades in that drilling. Here's some interesting geochemistry, just right off the charts kind of chemistry. And then you've got these this other trend here, this is the sheared rocks. So that's your deep-seated structure. And look at how this distribution of gold is looking quite impressive. Distribution of gold. And they're projecting here a few zones that those are the zones that you keep on following deeper. And that's where you know, these orogenic gold systems, they can go very deep. And so that's the big news for that company. Bonanza grades close to surface in an orogenic gold system. So now I'm going to go to their Relevant Gold. Where is the Relevant Gold? Sorry about that. I'll go to their stock chart and pull up Relevant Gold. Gold. Sorry about that. Just bear with me a second here. It's RGC. Now, when they're on the CSE, they don't always show up on my stock charts. At on the website stock charts, but hopefully it does. Just give me a second here. RGC dot. No, Relevant Gold doesn't. So I'll go to CEO.ca and we'll go to RGC. It's on my radar screen. And so yeah, here you can see that they only have 50 million shares out, a small market cap of 12.5 million Canadian. They've been trending up since earlier this year. Well, mid-January, they started to trend up. that made a pretty nice breakout here. So it's starting to go in the right direction. And again, they're at a seminal moment for the exploration of a orogenic gold system, in that they're already getting these bonanza grades. So I'm very optimistic about that company as well. All right, Golden Ridge Resources. Let me pull them up. So Golden Ridge, oops, spelt it wrong. Golden Ridge Resources. Okay, so let's go to their news release. And this is a very early one that I'm quite optimistic about. So they did a maiden drilling program on their Williams Gold property. This is within the Appleton Fault. The drilling that they did was right on that Appleton Fault. The company that's got the big news out of the Appleton Fault is this Newfound Gold. They've become somewhat of a household name in the exploration side of the gold business. It's part of the Central Newfoundland Gold Belt. And they did an inaugural drill program of 7,254 meters. They announced that Golden Ridge Diamond Drill Program tested numerous robust gold anomalies in soil and trenches in the south and central portions of their property. The drill program followed up 2 successful field seasons in 2020 and 2021, which included extensive prospecting, property-wide and focused infill soil sampling, and follow-up trenching. Now, drill holes. Let me go down here. And this is what really stood out to me. So up here is Newfound Gold, and they found a few really important zones. The Keats Main, Lotto, and Golden Joints right here at this red star. But what I would highlight is that look at all this, these gold occurrences, and they appear both on the east side and the west side of the Appleton Fault. And these mains, the Keats, the Main, the Lotto, and the Golden Joint, are on the east side of the Appleton Fault, but they're also finding gold zones in their drilling on the west side of the fault. So both the east and the west are great targets for these orogenic gold systems. And your Appleton Fault is your deep crack in the earth, the crustal fault that allows those gold-bearing fluids to make their way up to surface. And as you can see again here, look at all these gold occurrences right on either side of that Appleton Fault. Now you go down to the Williams property and look at all of these gold occurrences again on both the west and the east side of that Appleton Fault. And so what really stands out to me is that here you're looking at the same kind of gold occurrences on the same structure, and it's an orogenic gold target. And now they've completed some drilling, and those drilling results are pending. I'm very excited about seeing those results, because they're definitely got a serious cluster of gold occurrences on both the east and the west, which is very much like what the Newfound Gold people found. Many gold occurrences on the east and west side of the Appleton Fault. Same story down here. And really, if you look at this map, you're not going to see that tight cluster of gold occurrences, other than where the Newfound Gold found Keats Main, Lotto, and Golden Joint. You follow that fault down here, and boom, look at, you got the exact same situation. many gold occurrences on the east and west side of the Appleton Fault. Golden Ridge is a very exciting story to me, and I like their chances of delivering some excellent results. Let's pull up their stock chart, GLDN. And when we do that, you can see that they bottomed in November. They've had a very nice rally through their 50-day moving average. They traded above their, they traded above their 200-day moving average. They came back down to that 50-day moving average, but then it popped off of that and went back above the 200-day and the 50-day. I would also point out that this trajectory of the 50-day suggests that they're only maybe a week away from a golden cross. And I think that this trend has a lot more legs to it. Let's see what their valuation is before we move on to the next company. And there's GLDN. And their valuation is $7 million Canadian. Now, let's go down to Newfound Gold. And Newfound Gold has a $868 million valuation. And in the case of GLDN, I would point out again, before I leave, look at that occurrences that has driven Newfound Gold to tremendous heights. You got the same thing here, and this company only has a $7 million valuation. Do your homework on that one, because I think they got a bright future. All right, so then next company is Emergent Metals. They're in Quebec, and let me just pull up their website, Emergent Metals. There it is. And what stood out to me was that, okay, Emergent Metals hits visible gold in initial drill holes at its Trésasson property in Quebec. This is in the Abitibi region of Quebec. The Abitibi region is a very prolific region. They did a 4,000 meter campaign, and they got some nice looking visible gold in their core. You know, when you can see it on the outside of the core, it's a pretty good indicator of what's inside that core, because you're only looking at the outside of it. You're not looking inside of it. So often when you see visible gold, you're also going to see it come back with very good assay results. And that's what I think is coming for the company. David Wilkinson, who's their president and CEO, stated, and I quote, "Nick noted the presence of visible gold in select core samples during their historical drill programs, and we are also seeing visible gold in our initial drilling. We look forward to continuing the drill program and receiving assays. Once they are available, we will provide additional details on the drilling at that time," end quote. So then you look back up, and the company that had this project in the past was Nick, and they hit 10.55 grams per ton gold over 1.2 meters, 33 grams over 1.5, 13.65 grams over 1.45 meters, 20 grams over 1.10 meters, and that's very close to surface. So right at surface, pretty much right at surface, they're hitting these a lot of high-grade gold. So, you know, it looks like they've got something that as they get deeper, things could get very, very much more exciting. And so then let's take a look at their valuation. There's Emergent, sorry. And they only have 27 million shares out. They only have a $6.25 million valuation. And I'm now going to pull up their stock chart. And before we move on to the next company, and Emergent stock chart is here. So as you can see, they made a pretty good move here, then went sideways for several months. This is a pretty significant basing period. And as they say in stock and chart analysis, the longer the base, the further they go in space. They did have a pretty good breakout here, but then they softened up, and they are trading below they closed on Friday below their 50-day moving average, or sorry, their 200-day moving average. But the 200-day moving average is already starting to trend upwards. And I think that, there's a potential based on them seeing that visible gold in their drilling that the 50-day and the 200-day could start trending upwards even more aggressively. So I like this story a lot, and I think you should do your homework on that one because they got visible gold in the drill core and a very modest valuation. All right, so now I'm going to move on to Summa Silver. And Summa Silver has been really catching my attention. I talked about it a couple in the news shows, and here's their news. And again, you can learn a lot about, let's take a look at this February 1st news release. That's the one I talked about recently. They hit high-grade silver. Oh, okay, here's the headline. Summa Silver drills 16.6 meters of 445 grams of gold, silver equivalent, including 9.9 meters of 640 grams of gold from their Mogolon project in New Mexico. Look at these results, 16.6 meters, 445 grams per ton of silver, 9.9 meters, 640, 17.8 meters at 339. I also had 2.1 meters at 1,233 grams per ton of silver equivalent. That's a kilo and a quarter of silver. It's always nice when you can talk about silver in kilos. Drilling focused on expansion around the historic consolidated mine continues to intersect strong mineralization where MOG 22-808 is an 80-meter step out, MG 10 is a 50-meter step out, MOG 2211 is a 65-meter step out. The mineralized zone remains open in multiple directions with strong silver assays returned from holes at both ends of the current drilling pattern. Drilling continues with 3 drill rigs now in full operation until the end of February, testing those extensions. Work is just beginning at the project with the first target representing only 1% of the total vein and structure strike length present at the project. Galen McNamara, who's the CEO, stated, and I quote, 10 of 11 holes drilled by the company at Mogolon have now intersected strongly mineralized zones of silver and gold. Our best holes also compare favorably to drill results from our more advanced peers exploring and developing deposits in some of the most prolific silver mine districts globally. With a view towards building a long-term presence in the area, we look forward to continuing to explore in this special part of New Mexico. and quote, that's not an understatement at all. When you start tagging into, those bonanza grades, that's pretty impressive stuff. I live in Zacatecas, Mexico, which in this state, 10% of the silver ever produced worldwide has come from this state. And oftentimes you're talking about 2 to 4 meter wide veins with these kind of grades. These guys are hitting 16.6 meters of 445 grams. That's the kind of stuff that makes mines and makes very low cost and high margin mines. So let's take a look at Summa's, where are they? Summa Silver. I know they're on my. Let me just pull this up here. I'll go to Summa Silver on CEO. There you go, Summa Silver. SSVR. I got them down here. Just hold on. Bear with me for a second. Here it is. So they've got 91 million shares out, a $59 million valuation. Now let's go to their stock chart, SSVR, and that trades on the Venture Exchange. Okay, so as you can see here, quite surprising that the stock went down off of that news. Although it has gone through a golden cross here, I think this one's very oversold here, considering the quality of the grades that they're hitting are just off the charts. Really impressive stuff that they're hitting. I think they're a day or two away from rallying and breaking out above that 200-day and that 50-day moving average. One thing that could help that out in the short term is a stronger action in the gold price and the silver price. And I think that that's coming. I think the US dollar has recently been overbought, and subsequently the gold and the silver price have gone down. And the sentiment is not, it's surprising that after a few months of very strong movement in the gold and silver price, that a few days of negative action, gets these stocks oversold right away. So, I'm very bullish on Summa Silver. Okay, and Masivo Silver has a really exciting project in Nevada. And I did do this interview that I was talking about I would do with them. Now, what stands out to me about Masivo, let me just pull it up here. That's the Spanish word for massive, by the way. Massive silver, I kind of like the sounds of that. So on January the 18th, they talked about a 10-hole drill program. And they talked about the historical production around World War II that had very high grades of silver, gold, and copper. And it really got into some bonanza grades there as well, 2,800 grams of silver, 25.7 grams of gold, and 3.2% copper. And then I did an interview with the company, and I really got a great education. And I invite you to check that interview out. I had a long chat with their management, including Brian Brewer, who is their QP geologist. Brian Brewer is a no-nonsense kind of precious metals explorer who's had phenomenal success in the past when he was with Mine Finders. They made a special discovery and ultimately were bought out. So he's not one of these geologists that has to prove himself. He's already proven himself. And I really like his no-nonsense nature. And I invite you to check out that interview, for not only because I learned a lot about what this project is about, but the way Brian talks about exploration gives you a lot of insights into how investors should look at exploration. So go check out that interview. I think I put it out on February 8th or February 7th. Again, you'll be able to find that on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. So the thing that stood out to me when I was talking to the guys is that they believe that the known zones are vertical, and the past drilling that happened was vertical as well. So when you drill vertical holes into vertical zones, it's very easy to miss them. And even if you hit them, you're going to have this big, thick intersection that is probably not representative of the actual width of that zone. So what they've done differently is they're going after what they project as vertical zones with angled holes. And something they talked about in this news release here is that they hit two zones of mineralization, one from 72 to 140 feet and one at 160 to 189 feet. So what that tells you is that their idea that they're drilling into vertical, when you drill in a vertical hole like this, or an angled hole like this into a vertical body, they went through that from 72 to 140 feet. They kept on going, and 20 feet away from that, they hit another zone. So this is what they talk about in that news release, tells you that they confirmed what their beliefs are, that the past drilling of vertical holes into vertical bodies was not the best way to go about doing it. You want to cut those with angled holes. And another important thing that Brian Brewer talked about is in that hole number one, they wanted to go below the old mine workings to see if that mineralization continued below the old mine workings. And so that's another thing that they've been able to confirm with that hole number one, is that mineralization that was mined around World War II with very high grades to bonanza grades is open, it continues beyond the old mine workings. So then they drilled, as they say, they drilled into a thick package of mineralization at 72 feet to 140 feet and 160 feet to 189 feet. So I believe that they've drilled into two zones. And when you look at the grades that was mined just above that, that speaks very highly to the potential of what those results will say. And they very well could have some results coming back in the next couple of weeks. But then you look at Masivo's valuation, and it is a 21.91 million shares out and only a $5 million valuation, which is pretty remarkable to me based on what I think they've already shown, that their idea that the historical or the past drilling was drilled at the wrong angles. They were going vertical into vertical bodies, and now they've gone in with hole one, and on their hole one, they've cut across two mineralized zones underneath the old mine workings. And so they've shown that the mineralization in the mine workings continues at depth, and that that the angled holes are the right way of going about it, because they hit two mineralized packages of rock. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over. Here's their stock chart. And as you can see, they had a pretty good breakout, and brought in some hot money. And then that hot money, isn't going to, hot money comes in, it goes out real quickly. And it went out real quickly. The volume has increased quite dramatically. And right now it's trading right at it. It closed just below the 50-day moving average. But something that I would note here is the angle of the bullish trend on the 50-day moving average is quite a nice indicator of where it should go beyond there. And with only a couple weeks away from them coming out with assay results, I think what you're going to see happen is that within 3 weeks, like when those assay results are pending, I believe that they're going to come out with excellent results, and that's going to lead them to a golden cross that takes them much higher. And again, I think that a great place for you to start your homework on that company is to go to my rocksandstocks.substack.com, where you can find the interview that I did with Brian Brewer and their CEO, or you can also go on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News on YouTube. Just do a search for Rocks and Stocks News. Okay, so there you go. I wanted you to understand, I wanted those my viewers to understand what the added value is that I do for my paid subscribers. In that I give them heads ups when I found a batch of new companies that I want to make official picks on my shows. I also hope that they become sponsors because I think that these companies are going to have excellent news flow. And I like, that's the way I like to cover companies. And that's what my sponsors do, is when they're sponsors of my shows, I can put out a lot of content on those companies. I do interviews when they come out with important news. I write reports about them. I cover them on my sector reports. And these days, it's important for these companies to keep getting their name out there because, you know, people are looking for good stories, and sometimes they don't have the longest attention span. And so you got to keep getting that story out there. And that's normal, even for sales. They say that sometimes it takes 3 to 10 interactions online before somebody makes a purchase. And so you got to keep getting your story out there. And that's what happens with my sponsors, is I can keep pounding those stories out there with great content and the interviews, the written reports, and in the sector reports that I do. And I also wanted to give a pitch for my paid subscribers. Make my paid subscription on Substack. I invite you to check that out. And I want to thank those that are paid subscribers, because you're making me have a lot of fun putting those notes out to paid subscribers. On that note, my shows are for information purposes. All my work is for information purposes. It's important for you to do your homework, speak with your financial advisors, and I really believe strongly in that homework thing. You'll be more informed about the investments you're making, why you're making them. You'll be able to think logically about them, give them reasonable timeframes to reach success, and avoid this, you know, looking at stock charts on a daily basis to evaluate if you should invest in a company. That's a real good way to get whipsawed and make emotional decisions. And I've always found that in this sector of mining, those that make well-informed, logical decisions with reasonable timeframes are the ones that make the most money. So do your homework. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.